Now, challenges for spatial planning. Four key challenges for human settlements have been identified. Firstly, globalization. In recent years, a number of trends in globalization have profoundly changed the outlook for political, economical, and social development. Now, these include, firstly, the increasing widespread acceptance of demographic institutions and market-based economic systems, the liberalization of trade and international capital flows, the growth in the number and influence of transnational cooperation, and the rapid technological innovations, in particular in information and communication technology. Now, still under globalization, such trends can profoundly affect the structure of communities. Just for illustration, they can contribute to increasing internationalization of metropolitan regions in terms of capital and labor, changes in distribution of responsibilities between the public and private sector, developing stronger roles for major cities within a country, and lessen the polarization of social and economic standards within cities. Globalization, reinforced by European integration, is intensifying competition among cities. Large European cities are attracting labor resources and organizing economic as well as residential activities. Technological change, particularly new information technologies, is favoring these cities as centers of service, as centers of education, as knowledge hubs and capital, as well as serving as gateway to international markets. Second category of challenge is sustainable development. In the planning, building, and management of human settlements, the concept of sustainable development strengthens the need for appropriate building technologies and ecologically sound designs, low energy consumption and promotion of renewable energy, selective and efficient use of resources such as recycling, ecological principles to guide settlements, development and land use, public participation in decision-making process. Sustainable development continuation. Most countries in transition have adopted the concept of sustainable development and its challenges and aim to implement Agenda 21. However, so far, sustainable development policies are rarely given high priority with respect to urban development programs and practices. In many countries, there are often conflicts at municipal level between commercial development and sustainable development, which are exacerbated by incomplete legal frameworks and underdeveloped institutional structures. Now, the third challenge to spatial planning, we have European integration and market economy reforms. Now, a number of countries in Europe have recently joined or are in the process of joining the European Union. This has strengthened trade relations between these countries and Western Europe and has enhanced the situation of subregions that are geographically close to the West. However, there is still a noticeable economic and social divide between the old and the new EU member states. In general, levels of economic growth have recently been a little higher in new member states than old ones. though a substantial gap remains. The main reason for higher economic growth rates in new member states is that the initial starting point was dramatically lower than the economic conditions found in established member states. Industry, agriculture, and the service sector have been undergoing massive restructuring in many countries in transition. Now, the general trend has been to increase service sector employment at the expense of the agricultural and industrial sectors. This has led to changes in the location of employment, that is, shift has been noted from rural to urban. The types of employment available to local residents, the travel patterns of employees, and the infrastructure needed to accommodate the new centers of employment. These changes have had various effects on migration. Contrary to the general trend of economic growth, employment growth has generally been higher in old member states than in new member states in recent years. Although there are signs in the last year that this could not could now be changing. Unemployment in the new member states remains higher than in the old member states, with few signs of convergence yet to be shown. Now, the fourth challenge for spatial planning is related to demographic change. Now, back in 1970s, 63% of the population of the European countries lived in urban areas. By 2000, the figure was 72%, and by 2030, it is forecast that 78% of these population will live in urban areas. Now, this is documented in the United Nations 2006 document. Thus, urbanization in those countries in Europe is growing and is set to increase further. In the case of Central and Eastern Europe, 68% of the population lived in urban areas in the year 2000. By 2030, the proportion of urban residents is forecast to be around 72%. Another key demographic trend in many of these countries in transition is the overall decline in population, which has had profound effects on both urban and rural areas. For urban areas, the total number of residents may not be increasing, but more people are living in suburbs and fewer in the inner city. Thus, cities are spreading and facing increasing demands on existing infrastructure such as transport, utilities, as well as waste disposal. For rural areas, local public services are being withdrawn as there are fewer residents to cover the increased cost of provisions. Across almost all European countries, the number of households is increasing while the average household size is falling. This means that the demand for housing is still increasing in some parts of Europe, even though the total population may not be following the same trend. In addition, the population in some countries have higher rate of aged people than others. For example, Southern Europe, we see a greater mass of aged people. With such incidences, this creates additional strains on local finance and a greater need for providing services. Common requirements for spatial planning systems to achieve a greater mix of land uses and densities in the urban structure that provide a full range of urban functions, such as housing, employment, and services, in a pattern which minimizes the need to travel great distances for work, for shopping, or to conduct businesses. The efficient use of land needs to be compatible with the social well-being and healthy environment objectives. To initiate urban regeneration in inner city areas and main streets with higher density concentrations of mixed employment, residential and other uses, these areas with adequate investment in modernization and renovation of the existing stock and infrastructure can provide housing closer to services and a wider range of lifestyle opportunities. To enhance and support regeneration of housing estates through innovative financing, technological and regulatory initiatives, as well as through demonstration projects, focusing on elimination of barriers towards investment will facilitate small-scale urban renewal through cooperative efforts and self-help. Now, common requirements for spatial planning systems to enhance broad participation, improve community involvement, and build support for sustainable planning policies and programs, to promote community identity through creation of meeting places, public spaces, pedestrian networks, preservation of historic buildings, and attractive streetscapes. To provide a range of cultural and recreational opportunities that correspond to diverse needs through efficient use of natural areas for passive recreation and cultural purposes, to maintain a system of integrated and interconnected open spaces, parks, river valleys, and waterfronts, and to protect the natural habitat and resources in those areas. Now, these spatial planning systems, they also provide water and sewage infrastructure that accommodates the needs of the local community while meeting the healthy environment objectives. It also undertakes considerable improvement of existing infrastructure in order to reduce the amount of untreated urban runoff and wastewater discharge. Furthermore, to increase the capacity of the existing infrastructure to accommodate for urban growth and intensification. Spatial planning system also improve and expand the transport system to meet the challenges of readjustment in the urban economy and also in order to sustain the competitiveness of public transport. Furthermore, spatial planning system uh, also looked at ways to maximize efficiency, supplement conventional public transit with specialized services directed at specific market segments. It also promotes energy efficiency and alternative modes of transportation.